What if the biggest difference between a wealthy American and a struggling American had nothing to do with education, nothing to do with family background, nothing to do with luck, and everything to do with the way they think? Today we are going to explore one of the most powerful and life-changing topics in all of personal finance: the fundamental mindset differences between wealthy Americans and poor Americans that determine financial destiny long before a single dollar is ever earned, spent, or invested. What you are about to hear might be uncomfortable. It might challenge everything you currently believe about money. But it could also be the most important thing you ever hear about building real lasting wealth in America, the very first and most fundamental mindset difference between wealthy Americans and poor Americans comes down to one simple but profound question: what is money for? If you ask a struggling American what money is for, the most common answer you will hear is money is for paying bills and buying things I need and want. Money in this mindset is a tool for consumption. It arrives and it departs. It comes in through a paycheck and it goes out through expenses, purchases, and obligations. The primary relationship with money is one of scarcity. There is never quite enough. Every dollar that comes in already has somewhere to go before it even arrives. If you ask a wealthy American the same question, the answer is fundamentally different at its core. For wealthy Americans, money is a tool for creating more money. It is not the destination. It is the vehicle. Every dollar that arrives is not immediately directed toward consumption. It is evaluated for its potential to generate additional dollars before it is ever spent on anything. Wealthy Americans do not ask, what can I buy with this money? They ask, what can this money do for me before I spend it? This single difference in perspective creates a completely different financial trajectory from the very first paycheck a person ever receives, and it compounds dramatically over an entire lifetime of financial decisions made from one mindset or the other. The second major mindset difference between wealthy and poor Americans is how they relate to time when it comes to financial decisions. Poor and struggling Americans almost universally operate with what financial psychologists call a short-term time horizon. When a financial decision needs to be made, the question being asked is almost always some version of, what does this do for me right now, or this week, or this month? The focus is on immediate relief, immediate pleasure, and immediate gratification. Buy the new phone today because it feels good today. Take the vacation now because you deserve it now. Spend the bonus immediately because having it in your hands feels better than watching it sit in an account. Wealthy Americans operate with what researchers call an extended time horizon. When they make financial decisions, the question being asked is almost always some version of, what does this decision do for me in 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years from now? The new phone purchase gets evaluated not just on how good it feels today, but on what that same money would be worth in a decade if invested instead. The vacation gets planned as a reward for hitting a specific financial milestone rather than as a spontaneous response to feeling tired or deserving something. This difference in time orientation is not about being cheap or denying yourself the pleasures of life. It is about understanding that every financial decision you make today is simultaneously a decision about your financial reality. 10 and 20 and 30 years from now, perhaps nowhere is the mindset difference between wealthy and poor Americans more clearly visible than in how they think about and use debt. For most struggling Americans, debt is something that happens to them rather than something they choose strategically. Credit cards get used to buy things that depreciate immediately after purchase. Car loans get taken out for vehicles that lose thousands of dollars in value the moment they leave the dealership. Personal loans get used for vacations and electronics and experiences that leave no lasting financial value behind. In this mindset, debt is a tool for accessing things you cannot currently afford. It is consumer debt, and it makes the lender wealthy while keeping the borrower perpetually behind. For wealthy Americans, debt is viewed in a completely different light. Wealthy Americans understand the difference between bad debt and good debt at a fundamental level, and they use that understanding to their massive advantage. Good debt in the wealthy mindset is debt that is used to acquire assets that generate income or appreciate in value. A mortgage on a rental property that generates monthly cash flow is good debt because the tenant is paying down the debt while the asset grows in value. A business loan that generates more revenue than it costs is good debt because it creates wealth rather than consuming it. Wealthy Americans do not avoid all debt. They avoid bad debt religiously, while strategically embracing good debt as one of the most powerful wealth building tools available to any American. The fourth major mindset difference between wealthy and struggling Americans is how they think about where income comes from and how many sources of it they need. The vast majority of struggling Americans operate with what is called a single income stream mindset. You go to work, you trade your time for a wage or salary. You bring that money home and you live on it until the next paycheck arrives. Your entire financial life depends on one employer, one job, one income stream. If that job disappears tomorrow through layoffs or illness or any other disruption, the entire financial foundation collapses immediately. This is why so many Americans describe themselves as one paycheck away from financial disaster. Because structurally, that is exactly what they are. Wealthy Americans are obsessed with what they call multiple streams of income. Study after study of self-made American millionaires consistently shows that the average millionaire has not one, not two, but 7 different sources of income working simultaneously. Some of those income streams are active, meaning they require ongoing time and effort. But many of them are passive, meaning they generate money whether the person is working, sleeping, vacationing, or doing absolutely nothing. The wealthy mindset asks constantly, how can I create another income stream from what I already know, already own, or already do? This question leads to rental properties, dividend investments, online businesses, licensing deals, and dozens of other income-generating assets that work around the clock, building wealth without requiring the owner's constant attention. Point one of the most revealing mindset differences between wealthy and struggling Americans is their relationship with learning and self-education after they leave formal schooling behind. For many struggling Americans, education ends with a diploma or a degree. Once the formal schooling is complete, the relationship with learning becomes Largely passive. Entertainment dominates. The hours outside of work. The average American watches several hours of television every single day. Social media consumes enormous amounts of time and mental energy. Very little of the time outside of work is deliberately invested in acquiring new knowledge, new skills, or new financial understanding. Wealthy Americans treat self-education as one of the highest return investments they can make with their time. Studies consistently show that the majority of American millionaires and billionaires read extensively every single day, not for entertainment but for learning. Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest Americans in history, reportedly spends up to 80% of his working day reading. Bill Gates reads approximately 50 books every single year. The late Charlie Munger attributed much of his extraordinary investment success to what he called his habit of going to bed every night a little smarter than when he woke up. The wealthy mindset understands that every book read, every course completed, every skill acquired, and every financial concept mastered is an investment that pays dividends for the rest of your life in ways that no stock or property ever could. Because knowledge compounds just like money does, and it can never be taken away from you by a market crash, a lawsuit, or any other financial disaster. The sixth mindset difference between wealthy and struggling Americans is perhaps the most psychologically profound of all, and it centers on how they think about failure and risk. For most struggling Americans, failure is something to be avoided at almost any cost. The fear of failure, the fear of judgment, and the fear of losing what little they have keeps many Americans locked permanently inside their financial comfort zones. They stay in jobs they hate because the alternative feels too risky. They never start the business they dream about because what if it fails? They never make the investment because what if they lose the money? The dominant emotion driving financial decisions is fear, and fear is the single most expensive emotion a person can carry through their financial life. Wealthy Americans have a completely different relationship with failure. They do not enjoy failure. They do not seek it out. But they have trained themselves to see failure not as a verdict on their worth or their future, but as information, feedback, data that tells them what does not work, so they can get closer to what does. Every successful American entrepreneur and investor has a long and painful history of failures that preceded their success. Henry Ford went bankrupt twice before building one of the greatest companies in American history. Walt Disney was told he lacked imagination and was fired from a newspaper before building an entertainment empire that changed the world. Steve Jobs was removed from his own company before returning to transform it into the most valuable business in American history. The wealthy mindset does not ask, "What if I fail?" It asks, "What will I learn if I fail, and how fast can I apply those lessons to my next attempt?" The seventh and one of the most surprising mindset differences between wealthy and struggling Americans is how they think and feel about other wealthy people. Studies on financial psychology have consistently found that many struggling Americans harbor deeply negative feelings toward wealthy people. Rich people are lucky. Rich people got there by cheating. Rich people do not deserve what they have. Rich people are greedy and selfish. This mindset is completely understandable, given the economic pressures and inequalities that many Americans genuinely face every day. But here is the devastating financial consequence of thinking this way. If you subconsciously believe that wealthy people are bad people, you will subconsciously resist becoming one with people who think differently about money. Join investment clubs. Attend financial seminars. Find mentors either in person or through their books and content who demonstrate the wealthy mindset in action every day. And the fourth step is action before perfection. The wealthy mindset is not built by thinking about changing. It is built by making small, deliberate decisions every single day that align with the wealthy mindset principles we covered today. Open the investment account today. Read the first chapter tonight. Have the conversation about money you have been avoiding. Take one small step right now and then another tomorrow and another the day after. Here is the most powerful truth we want you to take away from everything we shared today. Your current financial situation is not your permanent financial destination. It is simply the result of the thinking patterns you have operated from up until this exact moment. And thinking patterns can be changed. They can be unlearned and relearned. They can be upgraded and transformed by anyone with the awareness to recognize where they currently are and the commitment to deliberately choose different thoughts, different beliefs, and different decisions going forward. The wealthy Americans we talked about today were not born with different brains. They were not handed a secret that the rest of America does not have access to. They simply learned to think about money in ways that most people never do, and then they acted consistently on those thoughts for long enough that the results became inevitable. That same inevitability is available to every single American who decides to claim it. Starting today. Starting right now. If this video gave you even one idea that changes how you think about money, please share it with someone you care about, because changing one person's mindset about wealth can change the entire financial future of their family forever. Hit the like button, subscribe, and we hit the like, share and subscribe button, and we met in next video.